Hi, I'm Tom Stephenson and welcome to my YouTube channel. In this series, we're looking at Microsoft Project the Course. I'm a professor of construction management and I try to put my experiences to good use by showing and demonstrating different applications in the processes of effectively managing construction projects. But if you just want to learn Microsoft Project, I go through that here too. In this particular video, which is video number 22, we're looking at checklist, an updating checklist. And in this series, I've tried to make it that you could download files that you could follow along with. And in this case too, I've also put a Google Drive link to the checklist that I'll be talking about. And so the checklist actually looks like this. Let's just go to that for a second. So here we have the update checklist, all right? And so I'm going to run through these on the particular file so you know what I'm talking about. But essentially, ensure that the baseline has been set, name the files correctly. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about the file naming protocols. Make sure you have a status date. Update to the left of the status date, starting from earliest to latest, and I'll explain why. Fill in the actual start and finish dates. If the track was started and then stopped, split the task, so we don't want anything to the left of the status date. And if a task did not start, make sure that you move it to the right of the status date. We've got to try to make this update have everything the way it represents what happened on your project. If you're not able to get Microsoft Project to do that, I don't know why you're really running a schedule, because then you're not keeping track of what's going on your project very effectively, right? So if a task did not move, make sure it's to the right of the status date, placing it at the new expected date. And then we'll talk about trying to avoid constraints. Is there anything that was expected to start after the status date that actually started earlier? That's possible, right? So it should show what's been done. Even if something wasn't supposed to be done but actually got done, pull it back and watch what happens and make sure things are happening the way you want it to happen. And review the update from left to right. Is everything that had work started or completed updated to the status date? So you want to make sure that everything is in the right place at the end. And I think if you follow this checklist, I think it'll help to ensure that you don't miss things in the updating process. All right, so let's take a look. Okay, so name the file correctly. Well, right now it says basically job 0526 and it says baseline March 31st, 2026. Maybe I'm just going to change that a little bit to say file save as. I'm going to put it in the same folder for now. I'm not following things exactly. I've got whole videos on this, but basically I'm going to not call this the baseline. I'm going to call this update. And I think I've got it set to the date I want us to start. So we're going to call it update March 31st, 2026. So we're pretending it's March 31st, 2026, and we're updating it to that date. The only reason I have end file there is that will tell me this is the one that I've already done stuff to, so I don't load that by mistake for you. Okay, so we've got basically that this is going to be an update. And so then basically I've got in the checklist, insert the status date, right? And remember the status date is the date you're updating the project to. So I'm going to go to project information. I'm going to go to status date, and I'm going to run through a little bit ahead here to March 31st, 2026. And so that's our status date there. I'm going to click OK. And you see this line appeared here? Well, that's showing us that that's the date that we're updating to. Now remember, this line won't show up unless you said, I like the status date to show up. So you got to go to grid lines. You pull this down. And remember, I've done this in other videos. Status date, and make sure you pick a solid line and make sure you pick the color you want. So I've got red, click OK, and then you'll see it on that status date. You should also see it up here, right? March 31st, 2026. Okay, great. So now the next thing, update activities to the left of the status date. And so I usually like to display just so that you can see what's going on using the drawing tool. We're going to be updating everything from here that March 31st back to the beginning. Usually, in construction projects, we do a formal update at least once a month and more frequent updates in between. For this exercise, because there wasn't too much in the beginning, I'm just going to update from the March 31st date. And so that means you should start at the beginning. Like, don't start updating stuff here. If you're going to be doing the updating process, right? You want to update from the beginning of the dates. And the other thing that you want to do is make sure before you start, that was the other point I wanted to make here, is, you're probably in the entry view maybe. Make sure you go to the actual variance view. And I always click this square icon box. It selects everything. I right click, go to variance. And I can see, you know what? I haven't set the baseline here, right? I was doing some stuff before and I meant to do that before I started this video, but see, I haven't. You should always check to make sure that you have the baseline set, all right? And that's in my checklist as well. Make sure that the baseline is set. Okay, so how do I do that, right? I just go to project and I'm gonna go set baseline. I'm going to go set baseline for the entire project and click OK. Now we're good. So that means this has been copied here and pasted. That's been copied there and pasted. So whenever we make a change, it's going to show us the variance. Because otherwise, if I update things, it won't show me the variance. And that's why I want to make sure that's happening. All right. So it says to update activities from the earliest date onward. So usually you want to be in the tracking view. So I'm going to go to the tracking view. Now you could always customize which columns are in which screens, but I'm trying to keep to, simple stuff for you. And so we'll just go to actual start, actual finish. Now I've already got inserted into my file the duration column. Remember, you right click, you insert column, you type D for duration, and then it would insert it into your screen. It'll insert it multiple times if you want, but I'm going to delete that from view, keep the duration column there, and now I'm going to look at updating things that were completed in the project, or things that maybe it took a little bit longer. Maybe it started at the right time, we got the letter of intent at the right time, but maybe the application for permits, it took 42 days, right? And so that moves things out a little bit, okay? But maybe that's done. Well, we could go to the task tab and we could say, well, these two activities, they're basically 100% done. And that's correct that that's now 2 days, 42 days long. And I could look at this activity here, basically tendering protocols. I could say that this took an extra 5 days, and that's probably not affecting much on our project. You saw it's not critical, so it's not really affecting things, but I am starting from the left and working my way down. And the reason that you want to do that is if you block something as done over here, so for example, if I say this is done and I put 100%, and then I put something behind it as taking longer, right? It doesn't push anything else out. It's all blocked in. And the whole idea with the critical path, as we've discussed, is that you want it to be able to push things out the way they happen. So I'm just going to undo that. Control Z twice to undo that, because that's not what you want to do. And then, so that's basically why I say in the checklist, basically from the left of the steady state, starting from the earliest date, working your way forward. Now, if this is in where I want it to be, that's fine. I could mark that as 100% complete now that I've extended the time frame for it. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I can see a little bit more detail here. So I'm just going to zoom in so I can see this by the day, what's going on, right? So I just hit the plus sign in the bottom here so I can zoom in, get a little bit better granularity on what's actually happening. And so with the site trailer, so let's just say that went the way that we expected it to go. And so on that one, I'm just going to mark it at 100%. When expected, when other things move things. I'm going to look at site layout. I'm going to say that that went the way that we thought it would go. I'm going to say that hoardings and fences. I'm going to say that they started that and then something happened. Okay, so I'm going to say that they started that and something happened. Now, there could be that they didn't start it, right? And you could put, basically, you could move this activity. Okay, so this is part of what I've got in the checklist. If it was started, then stop, split the task at wherever it makes sense to split it, and move it around. So how do we do that? Well, there's this split icon up here. So there's task, and there's this split icon. So I could basically click on this, and I could say, all right, they started here, and basically I'm going to just click on it, and I'm going to move it, and they didn't come back till, let's say, the Tuesday, right? See how when I move it, it's showing dates on that box? All right, so it moved everything there, right? That's representing that they started, they disappeared, and then they came back. That's really good at representing what happened. Okay, so that's what I mean by splitting the task. If you don't like that where it's placed, you could hit Control Z, or you could just pull it back, and that brings it back. The other thing is you could say, well, and you could do this different ways. You could put a lag here, all right? You could put like a 2-day lag to say that they didn't start till the Friday. Now, because of this will show that it's delaying on the project. When we go and look at the variance table, it will show that this is delaying things. What it's not doing is putting a constraint, which is good, right? Because I could, if I especially delay something afterwards, put a constraint. Constraint doesn't really matter if I put something I'm just testing out in this view. But really, what I would probably want to just do is, I'm just going to hit Control Z, is I would just want to put an actual date here, right? So I could basically jump this ahead to, where are we in March? So we could jump this ahead to March, say, 26th, actual start date. All right, so if I put that to March 26th, moves it to the Thursday. Or if I wanted it to basically the 27th, moves it to the Friday. So that's showing me where it actually starts. And you can see it's basically put that lag that was in there. But it's easier when you just put an actual start date. So that's why I'm saying start from the left, move to the right, put the actual dates as they're occurring. If something did not get started at all, right? If this didn't get started at all, then that should be rescheduled to start after the status date. So that's another thing altogether. So I'll just show you on that. I'll just Control Z, move it back. All right. So if I need to reschedule it, well, then I could put a lag to where I think it's going to be. So I could double click on this, and I could say, all right, I think this is going to lag out at about 5 working days, right? 6 days. We'll make it 6. And it puts it out here. All right. So it puts it out here. It had an actual start here. Actually, I guess I didn't Control Z that enough. Let me just Control Z that again. All right, I'll get rid of that. I wanted to get rid of that start date, so it's holding it there. What I was doing was I'll just put +6 here, because we didn't even start this, right? I don't want the start to show. So basically, we didn't even start this. Now it's showing we think it's going to start. This is what the expected start date is. So I have that on the checklist, right? Put it, reschedule it to where the expected start date is, because you know what? It would move everything else on the critical path if that was the case. So we want that. We want to see what it's impacting. We want to make sure that we've done that for everything on our update process. We want to make sure that everything that was done is before the actual start date. Now, if for some reason, you know, you had basically the temporary power got done earlier, like for some reason this got done back here, then you should put that. You shouldn't just leave it out here. You should put it back to where it actually happened. So if for some reason we got the temporary power in because really it wasn't affecting the hoardings and fences, then we could do that, and we could just basically say the actual start date for that was whatever it happened to be. So we said March, let's see, 24th, 24th, 20. You know, I want it to be behind it, so I'm going to say the 25th. It says cancel, avoid the action will cause a scheduling conflict. Continue, allow the scheduling conflict. Okay. Well, that's back there. Okay, so now we've got that back here. If it was on the critical path, it would pull something behind it, right? It would pull something behind it if it was the only one on the critical path. But we got another critical path here which held everything in place. So it didn't pull stuff back. But if it did pull stuff back, you got to look at, well, did that really pull back, or is it going to be out where it was? And we might have to put a lag on that to hold it where we want it to be. But essentially, you want to show, you know, in this case, this was actually done ahead of time. So that was actually done ahead of time. And that will show basically that it was done ahead of time when we go to look at it. So my point with the updating is everything represented the way that it should be? Like as of the status date, what is done? Well, yeah, this one got done ahead of time. This one did. And this one had to be rescheduled. So we didn't even start this. It would have been back here. So we don't just leave it with 0 on it back here. We reschedule it. Okay. Now, if it was started and not completed, then we would have split it. So what are we going to do? We're going to now take a look here, and we're going to go and we're going to take a look at our tracking Gantt. And we're going to take a look at our variance screen, because I really don't know what's going on. And so I want to take a look at the tracking Gantt and the variance screen. I'm going to bring one of these activities, scroll to task, up on the screen. It's always a shortcut. Click on the activity, scroll to task under the task view. And now you can see everything in its entirety over here. And we should be looking where the status date is. Now, unless you insert it in the screen, it won't show up. So let's insert it. Once you do insert it, it'll be there for good. And so I'm going to insert the status date here, and I'm going to basically click there, and I'm going to click OK. And so now I'm looking and I'm reviewing this schedule, and I want to see how and where things are. So this temporary power activity that we had over here, we moved it back substantially, right? So it's now back here. And so it's actually pulled back, which is not affecting any of the activities on the schedule. Now, we are here 8 days delayed, because this is basically, we're going here. This caused a 2-day delay. I would want to put a note. Okay, so you should update with any particular notes and have that in your checklist so that you're checking that off. Why did the permits take longer? You may not want to give this to the client, the notes. That depends on how you want to update that process. But basically, you're wanting to know what's going on. But particularly if the client is causing your delays, you do want to put those points in place. Here, we've got hoardings and signage, all right? And so basically, we can see that we've, for some reason, gone from 2 days to 8 days, and they didn't come at the time that we expected. And so this has pushed out a bunch of activities. We can see that we actually are earlier with our temporary power. Okay, so we're earlier with our temporary power, which is helping us just with that, but not really anything else. It's not pulling anything else because this is on the critical path over here. And we've marked these things as being 100% complete. I've told you in other videos, there's ways of, identifying a whole bunch of activities and marking them on track. Like if I had adjusted a bunch of these activities, I could just highlight and click mark on track, and it will mark everything to the left of the status date exactly where it sits. But only do that if everything is where it should be. And I really want to emphasize with the checklist, you want to follow from earliest to latest so you don't get something up above blocking the movement and the flexibility of the critical path. You want to see when something takes longer, if it's pushing stuff, or if it's pulling stuff back, if it's taking shorter. So that's the purpose of the checklist. Really trying to be careful that we've covered the main items in this process. A checklist I think of the Checklist Manifesto, a book by Atal Gawande. I've done basically book reviews under my book review playlist. The importance of checklists in project management, in construction management, I can't understate it. And so, because you can't remember all this stuff, right? And especially if you're not doing it all the time. But if you have a checklist that you can follow, that's great. And makes it much easier. You can modify the checklist. Like if you say, oh, Tom missed something on this, maybe we should put this, then just take the document and add it. Or maybe you see something, well, I know it so well, I don't need it on there. That's fine too. But without a checklist, it's kind of like, did you do everything that you needed to do? It just, with all the things we have going on, it's very difficult to keep up with that stuff. So I hope that's given you a little bit of insight. Now, I'm going to, on the directions below, check that because I'm going to leave a list of the other videos, but you could more easily just click subscribe, go to my playlist that says MS Project, the course. That's the one that you can download the files from. I've got other MS Project playlists there, but MS Project, the course, is the one you can download files from and jump in wherever you feel like you need to, learning from the beginning, the middle, or to these videos here. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you watch the other construction management related videos as well. Helps build the community. Please leave a comment, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now. All the best.